Hello and welcome to KSP to Mars, episode 58, where we're going to Mars. Fantastic. That's the name of the lander at any rate, and there in the distance we have the red planet. Let's take a look at our user interface and our trajectory. I've taken the liberty of doing the transfer off screen, and well, it has been arranged with several multi-kilometer per second burns. We are now passing by the planet at 6,000 kilometers, and that will then be reduced to a circular orbit of around 1,000 kilometers. All propulsively, of course, because we have delta V to spare. Well, I say that, but it's not actually true. We are running a little bit low on the liquid fuel. We have 500 units in both these tanks. Of course, the 40-ton Mars lander is completely full, but we will need that fuel to lift off from the planet. Any leftovers will be donated to Prometheus, of course. That said, on the way back it will be a lot lighter because the Mars Fantastic is not coming home with it, nor is the care package here. So at least the Prometheus should definitely be able to make it home. Currently, if we look at the Kerbal Engineering display, we have 13,500 meters per second left. We'll spend about 4,000 or 5,000 of that getting into orbit around Mars, but this is calculating it based on an 8,000 second specific impulse. I don't know where it gets that. I think it averages the nuclear engine and the DT Vista engine. If we are frugal with the throttle, don't go over a quarter, we can burn at 60,000 seconds of specific impulse. So what I'm saying is, should we need to, we can limp home very, very slowly on the last drags of fuel. So I'm not worried about delta V too much. Now, way out here, I'm first going to do all the science experiments once again. Most of them have been done, but nothing has ever been returned. And of course, the Prometheus is going to return to Kerbin, so all these experiments bear repeating. So let's have a look at the gravity sensor. Yeah, 87.1 to take home. That's nothing to scoff at. Very good. Temperature data, we can't do that from out here. And I could have brought a magneto scanner, which I didn't, but then again, you can't take the data out of them, so they're a little bit harder to do. We have the materials bay. I could do that, and the goo canisters here, but I'm going to save them for either on the surface of Mars, or in the atmosphere, or probably, yeah, I'm going to save them for somewhere else. Crew reports, I think all of those have definitely been done. Yeah, they should have been. So there's no use in doing that. I'm going to save the EVA for later because there is a gravity scanner on this side of the vessel as well. And once we are in a low orbit over Mars, we can do the low orbit readings as well and then take all of that aboard in one big EVA. So I'm going to put the ship in that low orbit and then I'll check back with you. And as promised, here we are in a low orbit over Mars, about 900 by 700 kilometers. I'm just going to take a set of readings of all the sensors and then I will prepare for landing. And well, I hope this will be the time that at least one, well, there will be only one pilot, that someone, somewhere, somehow will in fact survive this. Oh wait. Oh dear. Oh, I thought for a second that this here was the truncated fuel line that was no longer leading to this, and it might very well be, but there's one on the other side as well. So the lander will work. That is fortunate. Right, so we have a temperature scan, a gravity scan, and another gravity scan to take aboard, and we will take that aboard into the Prometheus. So let's have a look. Who is sitting in the cupola module? And the crew hatch. Go on, give me the crew hatch. Well, is there anyone in here? It's Gusry in there. Could that be Carrick that's in the cupola? Yes, it is. Hello, Carrick. He can do an EVA now and get that science, and then of course it will be the other guy whose name I've forgotten now to land on the surface. Yeah, this ship is nice and large. That has caused the transfers to be quite time consuming because they run at about 20 FPS, which is not wonderful, and the lander will do better. One problem was this Kerbal Engineering system that's bolted to the rocket here. I don't know why or how, but it has not been great at predicting the delta V amounts. I think it's been overestimating them, because well, we burned through most of the fuel in the Prometheus at any rate. The Mars Fantastic, the lander, still has all of its fuel, and that gives it about 7.5 kilometers per second of delta V. And it will need most or all of that. So I think the mission plan to also visit Phobos and Deimos might be on the ropes. We will land first, of course, praying and hoping that that will in fact go well. And then when we get back here to the magnificent fusion ship that we have, we will put all the fuel aboard, see what delta V we have, offload all of the useless oxidizer, of which I have brought way too much, offload all of that into the Mars Fantastic, and then either leave it behind and visit the Mars lab, or leave that behind and visit Phobos and Deimos, although that is really scary to visit with the Prometheus, because, well, the ion probe just got exploded out of the sky. I'm not sure I dare subject our mothership to that. It depends how it goes. If it turns out we need a lot less fuel than expected to get back up from Mars, then we might do it with the lander, and otherwise those might be preserved for yet another mission. Most important thing is that we do the landfall on Mars, and that we resupply our retrograde orbiting Mars laboratory with some fresh nuclear reactors. Of course, because they will generate science for us on the go. So here we have Gusri, I think his name was, that is now getting back into his spaceship. He gets to stay in the relative safety of space, with which I'm sure he is happy. So that leaves Jetgun Kerman. He is in the lander can here, and he is the proud, the honor of the happy guy that gets to explore Mars. Let's just check the fuel. All that is good to go. We have radioisotope thermal generators, so we don't need to worry about power. We just need to undock this docking port. Here we go. That's undocked there, and switch to that one. Mars Fantastic here, checking in. RCS system is go. Let's edge away from the mothership. Here we are. We are autonomous. Kerbal Engineer coming online. Let's have a look what we have here. 7.3 kilometers per second of delta V. Let's get some separation going from the Prometheus and then do the heat shield transfer maneuver. Very important. If we do that, yes, we then still can use these engines with impunity. So, powering up nuclear thermal drives. Activate that. Activate that. And let's give those a test burn. There we go. Engines nominal. Receding from Prometheus. That's that. What's our trajectory like now? We're still at a 730 kilometer periapsis. If we do it here, we will do it in the night. Now we will reduce our trajectory from this side so we may enter in the daylight, which is of course nicer aesthetically. So now comes the most interesting maneuver of the whole thing. We are going to switch sides. We're going to switch the heat shield to the other side. So I'm going to decouple the node. Switch to it. Give that a tiny puff of RCS. No, this way. And then rather than piloting this all the way around, we are just going to switch. We're just going to turn around the Mars Fantastic. That is the target. And I think we should be able to do that. No problem. And that's of course useful because now we can enter as first, and then the parachutes can be deployed from the get-go, and we can separate the heat shield when we want and then immediately start thrusting with the engines. No need to turn around while plummeting through the atmosphere. That's the stage where everything went wrong previously, so hopefully all of that will go right. So let's get back here, set that as a target, RCS on, and we are approaching easy as counting to 1, 2, 3. There we are, go on, snatch. Reconfiguration complete, wonderful. Let's figure out the staging, hit a quick save first. Some of these things go horribly wrong, we want to be able to revert. Of course, that's not applicable for catastrophic crashes. Those are very, very real. So we want the drogue chutes to deploy first when we hit space. So they can go in their own stage. Then we have the heavier parachutes. And then finally we can ditch the heat shield just before we deploy the landing legs. Yeah, I think that is a good sequence of events. So now then comes the time warping to the point where we can decrease our orbit. I think that will be here. And we shall work... No, it will be a little bit more here, because of course we want to aim that to be in the daylight side more than anything else. And we will go with a periapsis of... Well, I'm going to do it on the fly there. We will go with a periapsis of about 80 kilometers, and we will do so here. Then we will... Yeah, that's a good spot, and it's a mere 160 meters per second from this altitude. Obviously, we want to keep this ship as full as possible so that it will have enough delta V to actually get into orbit again. Orbital speed at this altitude is about 3 kilometers per second, so if we have that, well, orbit of course will be a bit lower. Let's say 4 and be generous, and if we get down with 6 kilometers per second remaining, we can expend about 2 kilometers per second in gravity and drag losses, and that's about the same losses you expect on a terrestrial ascent to orbit. So, well, it will be a lot less on Mars because the gravity is lower and the atmosphere is thinner. Then again, this is all calculated with 800 seconds of specific impulse from the nuclear engines. That will be a little bit diminished as well, courtesy of Mars's atmosphere. It's thin, but it's there. So I think we have enough. We even have a small margin of error, but it's not a huge margin of error. It will be a challenge, let's put it that way. Right, we have the maneuver node here. Wonderful. Let's do this 45-second burn and then proceed to the landing, hopefully. Let's see, 45 seconds. Well, this is completely dark. I will skip forward to when we are intersecting the atmosphere. And there we have it, the sun is above the horizon, we are in the atmosphere, and must of course not forget to actually inflate the heat shield. So, re-entry, well, not re-entry, well, re-entry in the sense that previous Kerbals have tried before. Entry has commenced, and now of course it is the challenge to see if, well, I can talk long and short about this, but we'll just have to see if Jetgen is going to survive. Let's pull up the engineer window here and switch that to surface mode. There's no impact predicted yet because we are still technically in orbit. And let's have a look at our heat shield, what kind of drag forces that's experiencing. Very, very low amount of drag. If we inspect our drogue chutes here, I put the deployment altitude at the highest it would go, 5 kilometers above the terrain. And well, I think that's reasonable because the air is very thin here, and we want these to deploy high up. The drag they produce is less than the regular parachutes do, but well, they do it at a higher altitude. So hopefully they will aid our descent, slow us down before we catastrophically hit the terrain. Another thing that's helping is that we established orbit and a low orbit at that first with the Prometheus. That means we're hitting air at 3.5 kilometers per second instead of something like 5 or 6, which is the interplanetary approach speed. Of course, that cost us a lot of fuel and delta V, but since we have fusion technology, we have that. So that's good. Right, I don't want to deploy the drogues just yet. I don't know why though. I think it wouldn't hurt to deploy them now. Well, let's wait until we are actually in the atmosphere. Of course, I must not forget to do science either. Science pressure data, well, it will be a while before the game recognizes that we are in the atmosphere. Well, the game recognizes it, but the science instruments of that same game don't. Yeah, so I wonder what will be better, to jettison the heat shield here, just undock it, or to decouple it. well, that's for later stages. The beauty about the lander, the configuration in this way, is that, of course, it doesn't really matter if the heat shield sticks on. That is fine as well, because this is now the down direction. So all in all, I think this is a much better lander than the ones I had made previously. So let's try a little bit of physical time warp, because this is taking a long time. Our periapsis, as you remember, is 83 kilometers. Well, let's have a look. We have some terrible slowdown here. That's probably caused by something physical being calculated, or the switch to a higher resolution terrain system, something like that. Let's have a look. We're at half a kilonewton, 500 newtons of deceleration force. Our speed, though, is still increasing. Our speed is increasing because we are falling. Technically, our altitude is dropping, so our speed increases. We are slowing down because of courtesy of the friction and the air resistance and the drag, but that is not balancing with the speed increase from the falling yet. I think it's balancing right about now. So, not that that matters a lot, but it will give you a nice idea of whether you're actually slowing down or not really. Well, that's a good quote, yeah. Anyway, we're at 100 kilometers now, and I keep forgetting, I must have checked this 100 million times already, but when these readings start recognizing that they're in the atmosphere, I'm going to use the side that has no ladders on it for the high atmosphere, and the side with the ladder for, well, basically I want to do them when we're dangling on parachutes, when we're in the lower atmosphere. We haven't even committed to an entry yet, although I think that will definitely happen. The orbital display here reads 80 kilometers now, with an apoapsis of 680 kilometers, and that is dropping. We're still at 97, so we have a ways to go yet before we hit our periapsis, and before that happens, I'm confident that our orbit will change to a impact trajectory, which we can then hopefully muscle around into a landing. Let's have a look. Gravity scan. Don't think the gravity scan even works in the atmosphere, so in a way that's the best thing to use for checking whether you're in the atmosphere already. Of course, the gas chromatograph is good as well. It's a gas chromatograph for an atmosphere, but it tells me the magnetosphere can't be analyzed. These things are a little bit rough around the edges still. I'm going to hit a little bit more physical time warp again. It's always scary to do, especially with a multi-part vessel like this. I mean, with just a capsule, you can usually get away with doing that, but I'm just too impatient, I suppose. We are not experiencing noticeable G-forces. We have four kilonewtons, 4 of them, that are slowing us down. We have an autosave somehow while in the atmosphere. That's not very nice. I don't know why the game did that. I don't think it's supposed to be able to save when things are physicaled, when physics are acting on our things. Descent so far is nice and gradual. Our apoapsis is dropping steadily, as is our periapsis, because we're doing the slowing well before we actually reach that. But so far everything seems steady, seems controllable, seems very much under control. We have the situation in hand. 80 kilometers now. I'm going to have a look at the science equipment to see whether we can take some readings already. Nope, it's still in space near Juno. And of course the readings, they still display science, but they are safely tucked away in the Prometheus already. So even though the instrument here tells me there is still science to be had, that's not actually so. If I take back multiple reports of that kind, they will get overwritten in the command pod, or if I recover them at once, one of them will just not count. So there's no use taking multiple of those. So our new periapsis, we are at 80 kilometers now. Our new periapsis is 60 kilometers. As I said, a very nice and gradual descent so far. Not a lot of G-forces. We have 10 kilonewtons now slowing us down, and our apoapsis is entering atmosphere any second now. So realistically, no, we're not going to come back into space. Our periapsis, even perhaps somewhat worryingly, is now hitting ground level. So that means, yeah, thanks game, it recognized it as well. We are now definitely going in. And we can expect our altitude to start dropping a little bit quicker. And, well, that's the point because we're coming in for landing. 11 kilonewtons now from the atmosphere here. Can we take a pressure scan yet? Juno's upper atmosphere. Yes, we can. All of this has been transmitted before, but of course we're going to take that home with us this time. So let's take a temperature scan here. And let's go overboard and also do a goo observation. Yeah, bring that on home. Let's also do a materials bay observation. Of course, the other one should be while landed on the ground. 100 points from this one. That's very welcome. Let's do a gas chromatography thing. 49. There's even transmission value in this. Yeah, wonderful. I have 2 of these. And you can see here, because of the shaded lines, there is value in bringing back 2 samples. So we're going to do that. Oh, we can't, because they will get overwritten in the pod. Oh well. Right, that was the science pass. Back to the landing. Let's angle our craft properly retrograde again. We can do the lift thing. We can try and generate some lift so that we stay up high in the atmosphere just a little bit longer, and in turn make our descent profile ever so slightly more gentle. Not seeing a huge effect, and also don't dare to be very aggressive with that. Our altitude is falling, but our speed is not really decreasing. I think it's a good time now to pop the drogue chute. So I'm going to hit spacebar and hope that will happen. I didn't hear anything happening. This is the problem with these rearranged stages. I pressed spacebar. I'm not sure if that now just activated these engines, did the parachutes, but here they still have a deploy thing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit spacebar again. Yeah, now the parachutes are deployed. They're not doing anything yet, but the minimum pressure is 0.007. I tried reducing that further in the VAB, but when I tried it, it went back to 0.01 actually, so an order of magnitude more. So I reattached the parachutes and left them at the default 0.007. Actually, we can probably use the barometric sensor here to give us the pressure. Well, it's unmeasurable as of yet. It's in vacuum. Well, the heat shield disagrees. That's experiencing 23 kilonewtons of vacuum drag. Perhaps it's a quantum heat shield. But so far, so good. I think the majority of this episode will indeed be this re-entry. And I'm just going to give up. I'm going to call this re-entry. Nothing I can do about it. Okay, let's see if there's a crew report to be had. Look at that, a crew report. I'm going to transmit that home because we can. I suppose I could pop the guy outside and ask him for an EVA report, but I think we'd lose him. And we're still maintaining the cover story that we do care about our Kerbals. We want him to come home safe and sound. Yes. So no extraneous EVAs for poor old Jedgen here. No sir, can't do it. I wonder, is our pressure thingy still in vacuum? Well, it's not, but it's probably not 0.007 of drag either. Of course, when the parachutes fail, we have our engine to slow us down. We have a thrust to weight of 1.006. I thought in the VAB it told me that it was more. I thought it was like 1.4 in Mars here. If this is actually 1.006, we might be in trouble, because that way we're never going to lift off the surface. The VAB told me it was 1.4. Then again, that might use gravity values for Duna. This is of course Mars, and I don't know how they relate. So that could be a surprise. If we find ourselves safely landed and we end up having a thrust to weight ratio of 1.006, yeah, we will need a rescue mission, but we will see about that later. Of course, I can use the engines to slow down. That's what I was going to say. But if I spend too much delta V, then we're not going to have enough to get back to orbit. So I really would like the parachutes to deploy and the heat shield to take care of most of that speed. And I think we are. The heat shield is already slowing us by more than one of these nuclear engines, by 70 kilonewtons already. And of course, these engines, they can provide at maximum 60 kilonewtons. So the heat shield is doing a good job, and the parachutes will soon as well. 5 kilometers for a full deployment, and we are at 0.0003, so we need an order of magnitude more air before these parachutes even start to do something. I hope that works out. I hope that works out. We are still pretty much going completely horizontal though. We're not quite heading down yet. But we are also running out of altitude a little bit. We're at 40,000 kilometers. Let's have a look at the surface display here. 40 kilometers over the terrain. So yeah, it will be exciting. The previous probes, they came in after the heat shield deceleration phase at about 1,000 meters per second. They went in a lot faster. So I'm expecting here to see a final ground approach speed of about 500-600 meters per second, and that's also not calculating in the drogue chutes. Then I'm going to deploy the normal chute, fire the engines, hope everything works out, and then of course also deploy the heavy duty landing legs here. They can take a beating. They can land pretty rough. And then hopefully Jetgan will be the first Kerbal to, well, step foot on the Martian surface and live. Because technically a lot of other Kerbals have had their foots on the Martian surface, or I should say their boots on the surface, just they didn't have any live feet in them. Yeah. So let's have a look at our stats again. We're at 24 kilometers. We're now starting to fall a little bit faster. I am really anticipating the deployment of these parachutes. We are heading down at an alarming pace. 25 kilometers. I can attempt, of course, to, well, I'm going to try and, oh no, look, I wanted to rotate the craft to get access to the other sensors and to get them in the sunlight so I can click on them. But rotating the craft turned out to be a little bit scary. We're at 1200 meters per second now. I'm going to switch that to surface mode, only 1000 meters per second. We're slowing down rapidly. We're still at some kilometers altitude. This is going better than it was. It's still upper atmosphere. This is going better than it was with the unmanned probes. I'm going to put this in surface mode. 12 kilometers. Oh, we're coming in at the plateau at 4 kilometers altitude. That is unfortunate. That is a lot higher than I would have wanted. I want the parachutes now, please. Parachutes. Let's toggle the display. The drogue chutes will do something soon. They will. It's almost 0.007. There's the drogues. I'm going to deploy the regular ones also. We're at 5. They are fully deploying now. Yes, we are slowing down. We are slowing down. It's time for the normal parachutes. Here they go. Regular parachutes. We're at 3 kilometers. It's time for the science. Regular parachutes. There they go. Log the pressure data. Keep it. It's time to fire the engines at full burn, ditch the heat shield, and deploy the landing legs. Oh, we are still coming in at 100 meters per second. Oh, still he crashes. Still he crashes, but oh no. That was a lot. Oh, and he dies. Damn it. That was a lot better than before. We hit the surface at 100 meters per second now. Good, still 100 meters per second too fast. God damn it, that's a lot of science that we don't get. No, that's a lot of science we don't get. Oh man. Oh, that's rough. Oh, I really thought we'd do it this time. The Mars Fantastic would be the one. Oh no, 4,800 meters above the meridian, above the datum. That's the killer. I need a spot that's lower, and I need a place to tell which is low. I'm going to aim for one of these craters. Maybe that would have helped if I had thought before I just plonked the periapsis down, or maybe a canyon like this. You see, the most important thing today in the selection of the landing zone was the most important thing today in the selection of the landing zone was the fact that it was daylit. Well, we did see the landing in glorious daylight. That we did. That we did. And that's about all we did. We killed another guy. We got 25 science points from that crew report from the upper atmosphere. It was filled with confidence, inspiring words. But alas, it didn't really matter so much. It didn't matter. The words were inspiring, but the landing itself, an order of magnitude better. We hit ground at 100 meters per second instead of 1,000. But really, that needs one more. We want 10 meters per second instead of 100. Could have possibly fired the engine sooner, or selected a better landing zone. If I had 4 kilometers more, then everything would have been fine. Even if I had 1 or 2 kilometers more, probably. So, lesson for the next time is obviously to select the landing zone. It's that simple. Select the landing zone. Try and guess where we will have the most air to slow down through. That's going to be really hard though, because the path through the atmosphere is fairly long, so the landing zone then becomes huge. That's actually a problem that the actual Mars missions had as well. The purely heat shield, purely ballistic entry corridors, they were quite unpredictable. So like the Spirit and Opportunity rovers and those things, they had landing zones of hundreds of square miles or even thousands of square miles. And because they wanted a landing spot that was basically safe to land, they ended up going for places that were easy to land, but scientifically not the most interesting, like big deserty plains. They could land there. They could select an area that was thousands of square miles of safe landing area. So you can land, but it's not too interesting. Now with the Curiosity rover that landed a year and a half ago, that was different. They had rockets, they had better guidance, they had a steerable body shape to do S-curves through the atmosphere and target their landing zone. And their landing ellipse, if I recall, was something like 30 kilometers or miles in diameter, which is really tiny. So they managed to put it inside a crater and close to the crater rim. So scientifically a very, very interesting place, but previously impossible to get there, because of course if you land in the actual on the actual crater rim or on a big rock, your mission is destroyed from the beginning. So what now with these guys on the Prometheus? We'll give them 1 or 2 seconds to mourn their colleague, but really this should have seen that coming. We're going to lose some weight because we have a fuel problem. We are going to get rid of the oxidizer, and I'm completely aware that this is horrendously wrong. I should have ditched the oxidizer before setting out on the mission. I should have calculated the fuel requirements at least a little bit. Oh, the other way. And not brought as much useless oxidizer. Additionally, it might have been a mistake to count on the availability of the fuel from the Mars lander, seeing the Mars landing track record, taking the Mars landing track record into account. So let's ditch this for now. This is just useless weight. A little bit of thrust to get away from it. And now we want to balance our remaining oxidizer so that it's balanced. And of course the oxidizer is completely 100% useless. And we'll have a look at our current delta V situation. We'll pull up the Kerbal Engineer. the vessel, and if we thrust at a very low amount of thrust, let's say a quarter, we have 9 kilometers per second of delta V remaining. It's a lot. It's not overly luxurious. This engineer plugin, it doesn't play nice with docked situations, it doesn't play nice with variable specific impulse engines, and it certainly doesn't play nice with variable specific impulse engines combined with static specific impulse engines that are docked together. So maybe I was just being dim and didn't see the readout properly, but we have now 9 kilometers per second. And what I'm going to figure out, what I'm going to try, is to send these guys on a... Could we do that? Could we do a Venus flyby that would get us back to Earth? I think I'm just going to straight up head back home, because we'll need about 3 kilometers per second to eject from here back to Earth, I think. And then at Earth we'll need about 3 kilometers per second again. That leaves us with just 3 kilometers per second, and we'll have an empty Prometheus. We have a bit of science. We have 3 experiments, and we have the... We have 3 experiments, and we have the other thing, the radioed crew report. So it's not completely in vain, but almost in vain. What I want to do, I want to deliver this to the Mars lab, but I don't see how we're going to be able to do that. I just don't see it happening. We don't have the Delta V for it. These guys have to go home and refuel. So this can go on its merry way as well. The good news is that this is not helpless. This has a control system, this has RCS. Oh, but it doesn't have batteries. And the reactor is currently offline, because that was put offline to preserve uranium. How are we doing on the electric charge? Probably quite badly, yeah, not that great. But this reactor is available. A ship in need of a reactor can rendezvous with it, can activate the reactor, and can use that for its own purposes. So we just leave that here, and well, it's not a big difference, but it gives us 400 meters per second of delta V extra at 50,000 seconds of specific impulse. What happens if we go full thrust? How much do we have then? Then we have not a lot at all. Then we have just 3 kilometers per second. So full thrust is definitely out of the question. We are going to maximize this to... Can I do that with a thrust limiter? I'm going to do that with a thrust limiter. 30% thrust. 30% thrust. And let's see if that works with the KSP Interstellar. So if I now do full throttle, if that's going to do the correct ISP. It is in fact doing that, so that's wonderful. So yeah, it will be a slow boating ride home, because of course the bursts, because the laser for the fusion initiator will take the same amount of time. So the bursts, they last just as long as they do on full throttle, except they produce less thrust, but do so more efficiently. So I'm going to take care of that, and going to think of something to do for the next episode. I'm not quite sure what it is going to be yet. And something else. The next lander here will probably be an affair that's completely filled with parachutes. Just a ridiculous amount. And it might be a permanent base. Something that doesn't need to lift back up to the planet. But then again, how are we going to get the science? Something that might not lift back up into orbit completely. Maybe a small... Unmanned pods don't carry science. No, if we're going to send a pod, we might as well carry the science. We could send a chair. A chair on a rocket where the guy can strap himself and all the science books in. Or we just might do a lander and do it properly. Anyway, thanks for watching today. I hope you share the disappointment of not getting the Mars Fantastic on the surface in one piece. It's definitely a theme in this series, unfortunately. But we're not giving up. We'll come back with better technology, bigger ships, and cleverer solutions. Anyway, I'm Lorenzo. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.